thing? Thank you, Ethel. Huh? Woo! That worked. All right, come on, campers. Let's come on back. All right. So we're going to have very quick report outs. Are we okay on the technology? No more slides. Thank you. Great question. All right. We are ready to rock and roll, campers, right? All right, so which work group has the correct answer? Okay. Sorry. That was the right answer. None of us. We're all figuring it out. Okay, so why don't we start with Group A, all right? The research and evaluation group. Do you have somebody who is going to... That's you guys. And if you want to come on up and so everybody can hear you at the podium. Well, but if you could, what, do you need the screen? Okay.
I do need a screen, but I need it for me. So I'll explain.
Okay, because I want to make sure this goes out on the live stream.
Yes, that's what I realized. Can I just...
Yeah, I'm just going to mute
close
this.
it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So Paul, yeah, you be ready.
Okay, use the mic.
Okay, so Paul and I do not take this personally, but nobody showed up. And the reason we don't take it personally is we think, honestly, everyone was so confused about where they were supposed to be. Doesn't matter. We did a great job. When you have two people, there's no arguments. And we kind of love each other now. We shared other stories about our families. So, all right, so what's the problem? I'm going to briefly mention sort of the 4 areas that are part of the problem in evaluation of CRA credit and the grants and programs that they fund. One is, despite the exceptional magnitude and breadth of CRA investments for economic opportunity, it's difficult to locate a central hub for sharing studies regarding which CRA strategies were more or less effective. Number 2, and we can give you all this, Bob. Okay. Number 2, there are 3 federal agencies, as you learned today, the Federal Reserve, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, and the U.S. Treasury Department's Office of the Comptroller of Currency, and they all use very different forms and language in terms of how they talk about CRA credit and outcomes. Problem 3 was that it's really tied to problem 2, which is there's no generally accepted taxonomy for classifying self-reporting and examiner reporting of data after CRA credit is given out. And problem 4 is that there's really no policy or incentives for banks to conduct research and to find out how they should evaluate or do they want to evaluate and assess the effectiveness of their CRA practices. So that's sort of setting up the problem areas that we will address. And Paul and I worked out these, sort of answering these 4 questions. Okay, Paul.
Yeah, so relating to what can policymakers and examiners do to encourage banks to opt to invest CRA resources in research and evaluation, and to encourage or require examiners and banking leaders to use a common taxonomy for examination reports and data sharing? Well, one of the things that we feel would be very helpful would be to include a requirement for a research and evaluation component to assess the impact of all major CRA investments. In our conversation with Barry and Jeannie, I kind of raised that issue, and he indicated that it would be, although at present for researchers to, go and say, well, would you fund us to do a research study of what you're doing in this CRA initiative in the community, said, well, that isn't happening right now. What could be an easy transition, however, he indicated that it would be possible as part of a CRA investment to include within that investment package a component for research and evaluation. So, that I'm slipping into strategies, but anyway, that's that's one of the aspects. The other one is, we have a lot of money invested in the different kinds of initiatives in that whole spectrum from, financial literacy, digital inclusion, housing, but specifically, if we could start with digital equity and economic inclusion, to be sure that whenever you are planning a digital equity initiative, that you would include metrics to determine your progress towards, achieving the desired impact of that initiative. And also, we've heard from Jeannie that they did fund some case studies that were very, very useful. And so, that is another important, I think, need is to have case studies to get a deeper understanding of the impact of CRA investments, particularly in terms of families. And we know that's sort of the bottom line. We really need to know how these investments are affecting families in the community. The second one was beyond the much needed biennial and ICRC gatherings. What else might be done to foster sharing, promising CRA investment practices, Bob must have written this, less episodically and more rapidly and systematically. Yeah, that's Bob. Okay. So anyway, when we finally deciphered what that meant, we decided that what was really needed was having the information on initiatives published. And one of the things we thought would be very useful is to have harvestable formats so that you could aggregate these findings and use them as well. And then also, this is kind of slipping into strategies again, but the need for a central repository for research and evaluation studies so that it would be easy to access this information, to find information on promising practices and successful impact. And Bob is motioning me to shut up. Okay, the last one, well, let's see, we have two more. What steps can researchers and evaluation firms undertake on their own, irrespective of steps policymakers might take? Well, this goes back to what was discussed earlier. Researchers and evaluation firms first need to establish relationships with banks and community partners. and by having those relationships to then work in partnership with the banking and community leaders in designing and planning the studies for initiatives for digital equity and economic inclusion. The last one was how might the National Collaborative for Digital Equity and other summit partners best assist efforts to launch such initiatives. And certainly one thing that we all can do organizationally is to increase awareness of the need for research and evaluation studies to assess the impact of CRA investments. And also, I think, working with the federal government to also encourage them to fund research studies on impact of these investments. So those were the major things that we had.
Thank you, Paul. And I think once I share the following, I think you're all going to feel a sense of urgency about having really short presentations, because we're all standing between you and wine and cheese. So we're mindful of that. And in terms of the folks live streaming, if we could keep to the big challenges and save the strategies for tomorrow, that would be greatest process. Okay, so Kyle and Letitia, thoughts about the funders group B and how to share about what that group has identified so far? Well, I think you can come up to the podium. That would be ideal, please, because it's going to be live streamed. You're going to be famous or infamous. We think famous.
We have two quick challenges that are very broad. First of all, we have decided that one of the biggest challenges is communication and articulation. How do we explain what we're talking about? And explaining what we're talking about is explaining it to educational leaders and bankers. So it's like, how do we define it? How do we make it clearer for them to understand? So that was one of our biggest challenges. And then our second challenge that we are going to think through strategies to address is we don't have a return on investment statement. So if we can show how the inequities are so relevant that they're causing a loss of dollars. So if we can show these strategies will help us save X amount of dollars, then we feel that we can be most impactful in making the changes that are needed. So if we figure out how to talk about it and how do we relate it to the dollar impact, then we might make some progress.
Okay, Group C, fostering statewide initiatives. Melissa, come on down. Okay.
Good afternoon. So we identified, and I hung my charts on the wall, so we identified several barriers and challenges. Our group was comprised of 6 states, plus some representatives from the District of Columbia. We had a number of resources at our disposal, and we identified challenges for states and initiatives that boiled down to money, partnerships, broadband access, establishing a community and networks so that we could continue this work and communicate, and also defining what is innovative. What does innovation mean? What does that look like when we go to try to create proposals that are innovative? How do we define that, and what does it look like? And we began to drill down into the opportunities to solve some of those challenges, and they sound very similar, related to the network, the communication, the outreach, and the partnerships that will be necessary to continue this work at the state level. So, looking forward to continuing the work tomorrow.
Okay. So the building capacity for tech and librarian support, Group D. All right, excellent.
I'm Beth Holland from the Consortium of School Networking. Our group included 5 members of the Big Ten and 2 New Englanders. And we realized that the main challenge that we were discussing is the challenge to build the capacity of librarians and technologists to serve the specific needs of diverse LMI learners to attain digital equity and economic inclusion through and by a series of bullet points, meeting learners where they are, taking a systemic approach to providing services and support, fostering capacity to build human agency, which we further defined as intellectual agency, social agency, cultural agency, and economic agency, as well as using evidence-based practices. My app just quit. There were 3 more points. Sorry. Yay, technology. Should have brought the paper with me. Here we go. Knowing and sharing what works, so it's really focusing on research dissemination, gathering data on initiatives for ongoing improvement, securing funding beyond starvation budgets, and really focusing on sustainability. So, thank you.
This is a lot of good popcorn popping up. Okay, so I should stop mentioning food, huh? Because we still have one more thing between this and I was reminded by Dennis Harper and his Gen Yes colleagues. So we're almost at wine and cheese. So Group E, which is collaboration among resource providers. John? Oh, and Robbie? Excellent.
We have a team approach.
How perfect.
Life is good, everyone. My name is Robbie Melton, and I have John. We have the team approach. We have resources, and on behalf of the digital divide, we looked at the challenges of broadband, devices, content, training, investment, empowerment, stakeholders, and community. The good news, we have some of those components, but they're in silos. Bad news, it's not coordinated, and someone in our group from Drexel, Life is Good, said we need an infrastructure for collaboration. In other words, we all are here, we have our programs, our services, but putting them together in a collaborative, strategic way so that we can then present it to the various funder, a challenge. So again, I have my partner, John, who will add. Did I go through?
I will.
Okay.
Good.
All right, John. All right, I'll step right out of the way.
We'll do a do-si-do. So in addition to everything that Robbie just said, we all agreed on the value of collaboration. That's not news. But what we talked about is how difficult that can be because we also need expertise. And it can be overwhelming for one organization or one person to try to take on the whole world, and because it is a multifaceted problem of truly addressing the digital equity needs of a community. So what we really recommended is finding the experts who can establish their expertise and address one component or perhaps 2 components, but then be very open to partnering with other experts, similar to what Melissa just talked about in her presentation. And that needs to be an organized and collaborative, but also you need to find the space and you need to have the funding available to address these different components of this need. So one of the recommendations that we ended up arriving at that would solve some of the information flow and some of the funding challenges is if all of these different digital equity organizations could collaborate to fund a person to be a digital champion in their community so that that person would have the responsibility of addressing the information flow and information shortages, but also pull the various sectors together. And that could be because every community has experts that don't know there are other experts in their field right down the street. So if you have somebody that's hired that is the digital champion to bring all of these threads together into a collaborative process, that's most likely to be successful. So thank you.
Yes. And Bob, I'm streaming. So here's our challenge. On behalf of the 106 HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, interesting, we have heard about this initiative but I don't know of one HBCU to date to follow up and to take advantage of this. So as a case study, we're recommending the HBCUs and having at least one to come back next year to share, we heard, we conquered, and now we have resources.
And we have Arletha? Yes. From Bethune-Cookman, Robbie, and I know you know Arletha. It is an historically black college and university. It's based in Daytona Beach, and I think they are very game for this challenge, I suspect. Oh, I'm sorry. I withdraw the comment. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Put that down to fatigue. Really glad you're here. And that's very excited about this idea, Robbie and John. Okay, so Group F, developing educational system/bank partnerships. Come on down.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hannawald from One to One Institute, and our group was really geographically diverse. We had all the corners of the U.S. in there. So we identified the challenges as, first, we felt the system was sort of Byzantine and there was a lot of confusion about where do you go to find out what, and we wanted a map and a path and some great clarity of directions. We felt that there was a need to show that digital equity efforts would lead to economic inclusion, and we wanted to really draw that clearly to help build those partnerships. We also felt that there was a lot of wisdom in these communities and a lot of people working for good who didn't know about each other. And maybe, if we could pull that together. We felt that one of the concerns could be forgetting that the students need to be a part of building the answers. And then marketing. When we get these partnerships done, we need to make sure that everybody knows and can talk about it and see the evidence. So, since I'm between the wine and you guys, that was quick and sweet.
Yeah, that reception opportunity really sharpens the mind. It's very exciting, great conversations. So we're going to have one more